Hi everyone. Welcome to Neuro Tea with Nikki. I'm your host, Nikki, first year at Barnard, prospective neuroscience and behavior major, and the whole point of this podcast is to just destigmatize and make neuroscience more palatable for our generation. So, this is the first YouTube video that I'm releasing. I usually only release episodes on one, my website, and two, WBAR, which is Barnard's radio station. So this is a fun surprise. And this episode is the debut episode for season 2. And I think there's no better way to kickstart the season than by interviewing probably one of the most incredible cognitive scientists out there. I've gotten to interview some crazy people in the neuroscience world in the past couple of years, but this is probably the highlight of my interviewing experience. So let's cut to the chase. I got to interview the president of the college I'm currently at, the president of Barnard, President Sian Beilock. What makes this crazy is she is one of the leading figures in cognitive neuroscience. President Beilock, previous to serving at Barnard, was in the University of Chicago for 12 years, actually, and she departed as the Stella M. Rowley Professor of Psychology and Executive Vice Provost. Her research relates to educational practice and policy, which makes perfect sense, and her work demonstrates that students' attitudes and anxieties, as well as those of their teachers and peers, are critical to student success. In her work, she's developed simple psychological intervention to help people perform their best under stress, under pressure, and these are actually topics that we covered during the little Zoom call that you're about to watch soon. So in her research, President Beilock focuses specifically on success in math and science for women and girls, and how performance anxiety can either be exacerbated or alleviated by teachers, parents, and peers. She explores the brain and body factors that influence skill learning and performance, as well as how simple psychological strategies can be used to ensure success in high-stakes situations, ranging from test-taking and public speaking to athletics. She's published countless papers and been funded by incredible organizations and foundations, and as the author of 2 books, I think there was no other person I would have chosen to interview for the first episode. Like I said, this is crazy. This is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I'm so grateful I got to do this. So now, you're going to watch me not wearing kitty cat pajamas. You're going to see me dressed formally in the next segment, which is the actual interview. So I hope you guys enjoy that. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Comment down below who you'd like me to interview next, what else you would like to hear from Neuro Tea, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. Welcome everyone to Neuro Tea with Nikki. I'm here today with clearly an incredible person, President Sian Beilock of Barnard College. Thank you so much for being here with us today. It's an honor. You're an incredible researcher, president of the college I'm currently at, so this is amazing.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Of course. So we're going to start right into it. One of the big questions I have for you is, when we think about cognitive science, it's a very up-and-coming field. And because it's new, there's a lot of new innovation as well. So have you personally observed any drastic changes within the field?
Yeah, I mean, I think of cognitive science as the study of human behavior and how humans learn and think and perform. And as technology has changed, we're able to get much more insight into that. So anything from neuroimaging to some of the new brain scanning techniques. But another, I think, drastic change is I do think that companies and organizations outside of academia are paying more attention to how people think and how they perform, and really looking to fields like cognitive science to inform how they put teams together in their workplace, how they create the types of situations to get the best out of their employees, how they create employees who feel connected to the company. Like all of these things, cognitive science has a piece of.
Yeah, that's the day-to-day relevance of cognitive science has definitely increased. And you also touched upon performance of like companies and individuals. And a very important part of your research is also how you've studied choking under pressure. And it's such a fascinating field. One of my friends who actually, he wrote a paper on choking under pressure for swimmers and athletes. He's a swimmer, and he cited your work in it. So I, I was like, okay, I know President Beilock. She's the president of my college. That's so crazy. And I wanted to ask you, do you think choking under pressure is fundamentally more behavioral or neurological? And can you even make that distinction actually?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very hard to make that distinction, right? I mean, I think thinking happens in the brain, right? And then, you know, our bodies act, but our bodies, how we act also affects how we think, right? Everything from holding a pencil between your teeth, like to make you smile, can make you happier. So it goes both ways. And so, I mean, I focus on how performance pressure changes what we focus on, our attention, and part of that plays out in how the brain functions, and then eventually in our performance. So I tend not to separate it in that way.
And going in a little bit into your own personal life as a mother, a world-renowned cognitive scientist, the president of Barnard, as I said, I think 4 times now, how much do you implement the principles of your research on your day-to-day life?
I do research, right? So I'm interested in how I tick. And actually that's why I got into cognitive science and understanding poor performance under stress, because I was a person who never tested as well on the actual testing day as in practice tests. Sometimes I missed the game-winning shot in the sports I played when I knew I could have made it. And I really wanted to understand why I didn't always perform up to my potential. And I heard from many people that you're supposed to be really objective. You're not supposed to bring your own person into what you do, but I think that's wrong. Like, I think having that passion is so important. And I do use my research and my colleagues' research a lot, really just in terms of understanding people and how they work, and also trying to understand myself. I don't always get it right, but I think about everything from stress. We've been under long-term stress with the pandemic, to how to get people ready to perform in stressful situations. And I try and use the science to guide that, even when it's myself.
Which is clearly so important. And you touched upon research, and that really pulled at my heartstrings, because I'm interested in neuroscience right now because of my own personal experiences. And in fact, one of my biggest callings to Barnard was the fact that it embraced women and gender minorities pursuing the STEM fields. So to you, I have a question. How important do you believe it is to highlight the contributions of women scientists and gender minorities who are working so hard in the STEM fields?
I mean, here's why I think it's important. I think that there's ample research showing that across any field, the best knowledge, the best outcomes, whether that's knowledge or products or discoveries or money, comes from having diverse groups of people with different lived experiences at the table, freely pushing at each other's ideas, viewpoints. And so you need people who are not all the same at the table. Having a homogeneous group at the table means that you're not going to come up with the best ideas. And that's where I think having different viewpoints, whether it's racial or gender, minorities or others at the table, is so important, because it allows us to bring different lived experiences and ideas, and we're ultimately going to get to better outcomes.
That's so incredibly important. When I look back at my own childhood, growing up in India, there's so many times where I was maybe the only girl in a coding class, and to move from that to now at Barnard, it's so gratifying. You see so many incredible women, you see so many incredible non-binary folk pursuing fields that they're so passionate about. So I'm grateful that I have that opportunity here. And again, going back to my childhood though, I remember sitting with my parents, struggling to do my math homework. That was that one topic that I love math all my life, but I just couldn't grapple certain concepts. And you've written papers on math anxiety. I was wondering how you believe we can ensure that this math anxiety can be reduced from a younger age group. Does it stem from the household environment? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of math anxiety is learned, and it's certainly learned from teachers, from parents. There's this sense in our society, at least in US society and often Western societies, that either you're good or bad at math. It's something you have or you don't, which is wrong. You learn math like you learn anything else. And, it's socially acceptable to not be a math person. You don't hear highly intelligent people bragging about not being reading people, but you hear them bragging about not being math people, which is not okay in my mind. And the problem is when you're anxious about math, you stay away from it. We don't like to do things that we're anxious about. And so you learn less math. You study in easier ways. So you learn less, you take less math classes, you leave financial decisions up to other people. And what that means is that we're then missing a population of individuals, whether it's women or anyone else, who should be at the table thinking about STEM, who are going to make our next discoveries. And we have to really get rid of this notion that you're either a math person or not. It's learned like anything else.
That's so true. And I feel like there's this stigma, not so math, yes, but also most major sciences, and neuroscience is no exception to that. I've heard a lot of my friends say that they're so scared of pursuing neuroscience because it's considered to be this huge amalgamation of like physics, math, psychology, and it all sounds so complex, but it really isn't. So I wanted to ask you how you feel we can destigmatize neuroscience more, make it more adaptable and understandable for the younger generations. Like, what do you think we can do?
I mean, I think it's a great question, talking about how neuroscience changes how we live, right? It's so important for diseases like Alzheimer's or developmental issues, or even thinking about how humans interact with computers. It's important for thinking about how we weigh challenges and opportunities associated with climate change and decisions, everything, right? It's really an important model. And I do think it can be scary to think about some of these fields that have many STEM disciplines intertwined. But I think, it comes back to having really great intro courses where there's support and help. I really like the idea of weeding in instead of weeding out students. And I think a lot of what success is in anything from neuroscience to organic chemistry is figuring out how to study right. And I think faculty spending time talking to their students about how to study, how to get the kind of information that they're going to need for the test is almost as important as the material, right? Like in OCHEM, for example, I just went into Professor Nikita Nambiar's class and gave a 10-minute lecture on how to get ready for the test, right? And we know that when you take practice problems, when you study, when you do it with someone else, when you quiz yourself, you actually know what you don't know. And that's really important to know because sometimes we think we know the material and we don't know it. And one of the best ways to deal with that is to take a practice test. And so just giving that sort of information, I think, is really helpful as students think about these disciplines, because the truth is that any Barnard student can do anything that they put their mind to. I have no doubt about that. And it's about figuring out the right way to get there.
Absolutely. Yeah, Barnard has blown me away. I've been here only for one semester so far, and every day I'm impressed. My friend group is incredible. Everyone outside my classes, they're motivating me to achieve better things. And like I said, I'm so grateful to be here. And going back to something you spoke about a little earlier about stress and performance, I was wondering if you think there's any correspondence between elevated cortisol levels and performance on a task. Like, stress is good, but not a lot of people talk about that. So if you could elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? We all often talk about stress as just being this bad thing, but I mean, I think there's a lot of research that really shows it's an inverted U. Like, if you don't have any stress or any sort of arousal, you're not alive, right? I mean, you need some to get up in the morning, and there's an optimal amount you need to focus and do your best. We've all been in situations where we're not motivated or we're not at all stressed and we just don't put our best foot forward. And so the question is, how do you get to that optimal amount for you, but not go over the edge, right? And part of that is, in my book, Choke, I write about this toolbox of techniques for managing stress because I don't think it's one size fits all. And what is a little bit of stress to me might be a lot of stress to you. And so it's figuring out what are the kinds of things that help you get ready for an important test or presentation. For me, I give a lot of talks, and I know that right before is not the time to look over my notes. Like I need to distract myself for 10 minutes before. And so I'm learning the kinds of things that are helpful to me in my pursuit of getting the best performance.
That makes so much sense. Like when I'm thinking about my own ways of managing stress, like before a big exam, for example, I just can't go over course material on the same day. I have to like do something else. I'll color mandalas or I'll listen to my music. But it's something like it's a process. I've taken 18 years to figure that out. So like you said, it's not one size fits all. And I'm really happy that you spoke about that. But in a more general sense, do you have any tips or like bits of advice for a burgeoning quote unquote STEMinist like me and our listeners today?
I love that. I mean, I say, take all different sorts of classes that interest you. In addition to thinking about all the STEM classes, I think scientists need to be great writers and communicators. And that's something you get a lot of at Barnard with your writing. And, we have speaking fellows and all sorts of other programs. And then I would say, talk to lots of alums and other people in the field, maybe fields that you didn't even know you'd want to go into, because it turns out, an interest in STEM, an interest in technology is important for every field, right? And you could end up in med school, or you could end up working at a life sciences company, or you could end up thinking about human behavior at a huge company, right? Like Procter & Gamble that has a whole science division. I mean, there's just so many ways to go. And I really do think the best way to get that information is to talk to people who've taken different paths. And beyond Barnard, I hope you're going there to start thinking about internships and other sorts of opportunities. And they have a great program called Barnard Connect, where you can connect with alums in different fields and they sign up to connect with you. And I think one of the most important lessons I've learned is that paths are not linear. Like most people who've been successful in their career didn't end or think that they were going to be in that place. They had failures, they went in different directions. And that's a really important thing to keep in mind, because that's what taking chances are all about, and being okay when you don't get it quite right.
Thank you so much for that advice. Yeah, that's very relevant. And I actually, on a little bit of a tangential note, I know that there's this pressure to do research as an undergrad. And I'm a first year and I sometimes already feel that like from my family or from friends, but I know that research isn't, end all be all. So for that, do you have any advice? How should we manage maybe familiar pressure to pursue a particular path?
Yeah, I mean, I think research is a great experience to know if you want to do research. It also helps you problem solve and be in situations where you don't have all the answers. I certainly don't think you have to do it as a first year, but I think Barnard has so many experiences, the Summer Research Institute and other ways to get involved. It's a great thing to do. But I think research is just as important for people who go on in research careers as it is for people who don't. When I first started doing research as an undergrad, I realized that like things went wrong all the time. And I don't know if I'd ever been in a situation where things always went wrong, right? I mean, you're a Barnard student, you've been pretty successful in your life. Many things have gone right. And being in a research environment where you don't have the answers and where what you predict doesn't happen, and changing and iterating and learning, I mean, I think that's a great sort of lesson for anything you're going to do. But I would also say that it doesn't have to happen right away. You have 4 years here. Enjoy your classes. The first summer, figuring out whether you do an internship or take some time off or do a job, just getting familiar with different aspects of what's out there, I think is great.
Absolutely. The freedom to have choices is incredible. And before we wrap up today, I wanted to actually ask you some questions about your journey. How you began your journey actually through conducting research on working memory, if I'm not wrong. So how did you transition to studying, choking under pressure and, all the great things that you're doing now. That's quite a leap.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually not as big of a leap as it seems, because working memory, which is really our cognitive horsepower, our ability to juggle things in our mind and do problems in our head, one of the reasons we choke is because that working memory gets compromised by worries or distraction or other things going on, or we use it to focus too much on things that we shouldn't pay attention to. And so I began my research really asking questions about how people learn and perform at their best. And I soon realized that I was also interested in why people sometimes don't perform well. And what was really interesting in a lot of the research I read was that it was really about how people get better at things, how we learn. And I realized that there was a lot less work talking about why people who were highly skilled or who knew what they were doing sometimes didn't show what they know or perform well. And I got really interested in that because I'd certainly had experiences like that, in important situations like sitting for a test or an important soccer game, but also in really non-important situations, like when I'm trying to introduce myself to someone at a party and I don't even remember their name, or I stutter over what I'm going to say, or I raise my hand and I'm a little nervous about saying what I think. Like, these are all such interesting situations to me, because it's not just what you know, it's how you deliver it. It's how you listen to the other people around you. It's how you reevaluate or put aside that voice in your head that gives you self-doubt sometimes. All this stuff is so interesting to me.
Exactly. And the universality, I guess, of choking or just being in a stressful situation. It's not like it only affects me. It affects everyone, right? That is so interesting and so amazing. And coming now to our last question, what changes do you believe our student listeners can implement to perform best under stressful situations?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a good question. First of all, I think, setting aside time to study and studying by yourself, but also testing yourself with other people is really great. That's a focus on the academics, but something that's so important to us here at Barnard is also focusing on the whole person, right? We talk a lot about feeling well and doing well. This idea being to do well in the classroom, you have to feel okay outside. So how, as a student, are you thinking about taking care of yourself? What makes you happy? What allows you to step back? How are you finding joy in your life, especially during this crazy time of the pandemic and questioning of all of our social systems? Like, what do you do? Is it hanging out with friends, going for a walk, listening to a calm app, watching bad TV? Like, I really think that we don't spend enough time as high achieving individuals focusing on how we support ourselves and how we're compassionate with ourselves. So I would urge everyone who's listening to this to think about that. And also to remember that any self-doubt that you have, everyone else has it too. I think we sometimes forget or think that we're the only ones, but everyone else has it too.
I remember thinking throughout high school, I went to a very competitive high school, thinking I'm the only one who's struggling right now. Everyone else has it so easy, because there's just this facade of perfection. And one thing I've understood while I'm at Barnard is we're all sharing that. We're all going through the same struggles, and it's great that the community itself understands that we're there to support each other. It's not like we're saying, oh yeah, no, I have everything under cover. No. Students here are acknowledging that, yeah, we're going through a hard time. This exam is really tough, but we're going to make it out together. We're going to help each other, and that's how we're going to succeed. And
it's a special thing about Barnard. You feel it, right? It's a very intense place, but people are working together. And I asked a student a couple of years ago what she learned at Barnard, and she said, I learned that another woman's success is not my failure.
Exactly.
And I thought that kind of summed up Barnard in a nutshell. Like, this is a family where you're joining a group of 36,000 graduates and current students who are like ready to fight for you.
Exactly that. And I have a younger sister, and I tell her all these stories of the incredible time I'm having at Barnard, and the work I'm doing, and how I'm able to take all these awesome classes with great professors. And I mean, I can see that she's also inspired. So I love it here. I love the opportunities we have, and I'm incredibly thankful that I was able to interview you today. This is a complete
surprised. I remember I attended the talk that you did earlier last semester, and I completely fangirled over you. So this is crazy to me. I'm so thankful. So thankful.
Well, I'm sorry we had to move it a couple times, but I'm glad we did it. It's great to meet you, Nikita, and I look forward to seeing you on campus.
Yes, I look forward to seeing you in person very soon. But thank you so much.
It's me again. If you like that and want to see more content just like that, make sure to check out our